Let's go to the Sugar Bowl. Notre Dame and Georgia. Two teams with very good defenses. Okay, two teams that have won the games that they've needed to win to get here. Right, Georgia, a stinker against Ole Miss, sure. A stinker against Alabama. That was the Jalen Milroe, Brian Williams game, which, by the way, he came back in. Georgia's going to be without Carson Beck. Notre Dame's going to be without Riley Mills, their captain, as well. I think this is really interesting. The spread is 1.5 in favor of Georgia. Right, and this game is it not in Atlanta?
It's in the Sugar Bowl. It's in
New Orleans.
Yep.
So when I'm looking at these two teams, okay, it is hard to evaluate Georgia's offense, right? Because at Carson Beck, we've seen him at his worst, we've seen him at his best. It's hard to tell what you're going to get. Gunnar Stockton, I think people are going to assume, and maybe rightfully so, that Gunnar Stockton gives you a higher floor than Carson Beck does.
I think with the style of play that you're going to see Georgia run with, because he is a little bit more of, a scrambler type quarterback, got that dual threat to him. So while Carson Beck, you have the ceiling. I think, honestly, for this offense here, and we'll see what happens in this game here, because, one half of football is not enough to really tell you, if a player can win a championship for you. But I think with this team right now, and we've talked about it since the summer, right? The one concern we had with Georgia was this wide receiver room is not elite at all. And you've had inconsistencies, you've had drop issues, you've had injuries. Obviously, the tight end room is pretty damn good, but it's a significant drop down than what Brock Bowers gave you. I mean, look at what McConkey and Bowers are doing in the NFL as rookies right now. They are giving everyone hell, right? So, excuse my language there, but it's a problem. But with Stockton, right, you have that added running element too, and you're kind of not being as risky down the field with the football. And obviously, his decision making isn't perfect, right? But newsflash, like, was Carson Beck's? Not at all. You saw him put the ball in harm's way a lot. And so you mentioned floor. I think I look at turnovers and running game, and that's kind of the floor of teams, right? It's like, if you can run the ball, okay, and you don't turn the football over, you're probably going to meet your floor in most games. Yeah, I don't think that's crazy at all. And Georgia has about as high a floor as anybody in the country. And so you ask me, okay, Carson Beck's out for the year. You've got Gunnar Stockton there, former high recruit, been in the program for a while. You have a couple weeks to prepare. It doesn't really change my opinion too much. It's more going to be like, well, let's wait and see, right? If he really struggles, I think, yeah, Carson Beck could have given you some help, especially if you got some injuries to some pass rushers for Notre Dame. But the reality is, I don't know how big of a severe drop off it's going to be in terms of actual production on the field for your offense.
Yeah. Notre Dame's secondary, they've played phenomenal, right, all year, even with battling with some injuries and transfer portal guys. When I'm looking at this, I try to look at how is Notre Dame going to run the ball against this Georgia front seven, and I quite frankly don't know. Taking this game, I'll take Notre Dame plus 1.5. I'll take them to win as well, but I don't have a great reason to pick either team, if that makes sense. But I do think Riley Leonard is a gamer, dude. That dude just wins football games, man. I don't know what to say. I mean, he lost the NIU game, but that was really bad, and that was largely on Riley Leonard for sure. But the way they've been able to run the ball down the stretch, wasn't overly impressed with their offensive performance against Indiana, but Indiana's also good defense. All right, let's give them a little bit of credit here. Not the level of talent that Georgia's defense is, right? This is the best defense that they played against all year, but that's what happens when you play in the playoffs, right? You're going to be playing the best whatever it is, right, that you've played against all year, right, because you're playing in the playoffs. So, I don't know. Are you on Georgia in this one? I have a feeling you're probably on Georgia.
Yeah, a little bit. I just think their overall talent, 1-22, is a little bit better. I do think some of the injuries that Notre Dame has sustained are kind of brutal. Riley Mills is a good player for him, and he could be a guy where you really get effect affecting Gunnar Stockton, especially interior pressure. You want to talk about, getting an inexperienced quarterback, or maybe you're not totally proven quarterback, and getting them frustrated. Interior pressure could be serious. And you also saw how many batted balls that Notre Dame had. They put in work with that, right? And obviously not one guy who knows the impact of what it could be. I know they got some talent there behind them, but I think it's something to think about for sure. I worry. So I'm going to take Georgia here, right? And 1.5 is what we're picking it at, I assume. And that line has moved across 0 pretty quickly. But it's a pick 'em, right? And basically a pick 'em here. So I'll take Georgia to win as well. Um, I I do think like Riley Leonard is going to have to outplay Gunnar Stockton for Notre Dame to win. But like, how much more does he have to outplay him? Like, obviously, you take care of the football. What he does so well is avoiding sacks and extending plays and converting on third downs, right? Don't miss downfield shots when they're there. And you saw Georgia at times. Like, when have they struggled, or when have they excelled, and when have they struggled, right? You look at that Ole Miss game, you look at the Alabama game, and it was that Ole Miss front that gave Georgia like absolute problems, right? Turnovers, inefficiency running the ball, third down, just absolute ineptitude. And then Alabama, it was turnovers and explosive plays for Alabama. And so can Notre Dame replicate that in some sort of way? That's why the Riley Mills thing does worry me, because he could be a guy that you look at that front that Ole Miss did, and you could give Georgia some problems, especially with, I think, a mismatch. Now, obviously, no Benjamin Morrison, but they've played well without him most of the year. Like, this is a wide receiver room that Georgia, and Notre Dame has played wide receiver rooms that are better than this, for sure. Like, a good amount of them. Louisville, USC, Indiana, dare I say, potentially. I don't know. But I think Georgia does enough. I think Georgia gets enough.
To play into your argument too, like Riley Leonard, as good as he is getting out of sacks, right? He still isn't a good passer when he's under pressure.
Which no one is. Like, other than Jackson. Like, Jackson Dart's freaking crazy with that. But, like, who else is good? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that, but it is a significant drop. Like Riley Leonard, when he is kept clean, like he is unbelievable. If you look at the metrics there, he is absolutely unbelievable. However, it is a bigger drop off than I think most, you know. Um he's taken 15 sacks, or sorry. His pressure to sack ratio when he's blitzed is about 16%, but yeah, it's I don't know, man. I don't know. I like Riley Leonard better than Gunnar Stockton, quite frankly. I don't love either of them as a passer. Uh, we'll see. Jury's still out on Gunnar Stockton, whether or not he's a really good passer or not, I think. But yeah, sorry. And also, by the way, I think Georgia's receivers are better than what Notre Dame has. But is it by that much? Right?
I think the ceiling of Georgia's receivers is a lot better, right? London
Sure,
Humphreys,
absolutely.
when he's making plays, Arian Smith down the football field, right? If
The tight
Lovett
ends.
on third down, like doing his thing, the tight ends for sure. But, like, have we seen consistency in any game this
No.
year from Georgia? Maybe against Tennessee, maybe. But I also think Tennessee's secondary is a significant drop off as to where Notre Dame's going to be, right? That's a great point you
Even
brought
with
up.
injuries.
Yeah, even with injuries. And I kind of wrote this down here in my notes and prepping this. These teams like feel really similar to me, right? You've got a mobile quarterback, you've got pretty damn good running backs, your wide receivers, nothing to write home about, good tight end. Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. That came up on me fast. Pause. You got a pretty good offensive line room, as well as some solid defender, like a really good defense. Um, So it's like, if Notre Dame is going to win this football game, like, they're going to have to out Georgia. And we have not seen many teams do that. And honestly, like, the only team I can remember doing that in the last 4 years is probably Ole Miss this year, right? In terms of just physically overwhelming you. And it was on the road at Ole Miss. It was yucky weather. You had some turnovers, and your offensive line was kind of getting destroyed. That's what worries me. I I tend to lean on the fact that this game is going to be lower scoring, and I think both teams can absolutely win in that kind of game. Um, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I also think the coaching advantage probably goes to Georgia as well. I say probably. The coaching advantage definitely goes to Georgia on that sideline. So I get it. I get why
Yeah.
you pick Georgia. We'll fade each other. Definitely not a best bet. The spread isn't the best bet, but we'll talk. We'll maybe talk about it in a minute here. What else we like in this game? But yeah, I guess like the last point that I guess I want to make, right? Georgia and Texas, like when they played against each other, like turnovers were a big deal for Georgia, particularly in that first win, right? Like when they only had one scoring drive where they started outside of their own 50. Riley Leonard's done a good job taking care of the football this year, guys. And if Notre Dame's going to be keeping the ball on the ground a lot, I don't know that Georgia's going to have great field position all the time. So that's kind of where I'm at. Georgia been prone to turn the ball over on offense, but that's kind of a Carson Beck stat. It's not really a Gunnar Stockton stat. So I don't know. I think I just kind of like Notre Dame in the spot. I really do. I think that they run the ball definitely a lot better, and I think that's kind of the deal breaker for me. That's what kind of put me over the edge with Notre Dame there. When two teams that are going to be trying to control the football and trying to be playing their best defensively and limit explosive plays. I think the team that runs the football better will ultimately win this game. So for that reason I'm on Notre Dame. So sorry about it.
No, you're good. That's a great point there. Notre Dame is second in the country in turnover margin at plus 16, right? So not only are they turning the ball over, but they're also taking care of the football, like you said, with Riley Leonard. It'd be interesting. Either way wouldn't surprise me. What would surprise me would be a high scoring game here. That one, like you get in the high 20s, low 30s, that would surprise me, even with all the athletes on the field. I just think like it's going to be tough unless there's some turnover fest. But like we said, like without Carson Beck, I think Georgia's going to play conservative football. Notre Dame has done that all year and taken care of the football. You think Notre Dame running game, like their O line plus Riley Leonard plus scheme plus their two running backs, is better than Georgia offers?
On the defense side of the football, or what they
Well,
Georgia offers on offense?
I guess we'll say both, right? So like, in a vacuum, right? Whose offense is better at running the football, and then who's got a better matchup? Like, because yeah,
Well, it's been Notre Dame all year has proven to us that they could run the football a lot better. Even if you think the talent on Georgia is better on that offensive line, if you think the talent on Georgia is better at the running back room for some reason, which I don't think you would say that, I, Notre Dame has been way more effective at running the football this year. Period. Right. So yeah, I'll take Notre Dame.